Of course, Shagall isn't finished yet. You'll probably remember a villager from one of the earlier parts mentioning something about the Thracian Dragon Knights. As soon as you've dealt with Thracian, Shagall sends them in. And they're led by none other than... wait for it. Mr. Palette Swap. Yes, they couldn't go one chapter without reusing his portrait. So, he's back. Oh, and believe me, this will not be the last time. And this is why I recommended... oh, well, now they're attacking Levin. Anyway. Not so much without your leadership bonus, are you? Anyway, this is why I recommended keeping some characters near the northern castle, Mardino, because the Dragon Knights go for it as their first priority. Wow, Levin's speed's almost capped. In fact, he's almost ready to promote too. You think you can hit Levin with the javelin? Yeah, that's what happens to everyone who tries to hit Levin. Of course, later on, they die an even more painful death. Strange that they're only going for Levin now. I guess without Thracian's leadership, they're not really all that smart at choosing targets. But thankfully, if you can survive a turn or so of this, then you're pretty much safe. Wait a minute, is he there? Oh, 19. One more level. But he's maxed out his speed. Yeah, interesting. Like I said before, not too smart without their leader. If they'd all attacked Beowulf, then he'd probably be dead. Now, don't be distracted by these guys' weird flying patterns. They are going for Mardino Castle. Just takes them a while to cross the ocean. And I edited out a tiny bit there because, well, the microphone caught it. When I was actually playing this, I just breathed a massive sigh of relief then. You won't know just by watching these parts, but it took me so many attempts just to get through that. I made it look easier than it actually is. It is really, really difficult, that part. So, yeah, it's a huge relief when you finally get through it, and now you can just use these guys for free experience. Hopefully most characters should be around level 17, 18, getting pretty close to promotion by now. Unfortunately, no double. You can't force them to use their javelins because, like I've mentioned before, enemies automatically switch weapons depending on what range you attack them from. It is a bit cheap now that I think about it, but... well, you get some pretty cheap characters too, so it kind of balances it out. So close. One more enemy. And yeah, probably best to just heal someone. Lachesis actually makes a pretty decent backup healer too. In fact, once Ethlyn leaves, she'll basically replace her as your main mounted healer. I mean, she's not that fantastic of a healer, but, well, she's about equal with Ethlyn. I just realised how strength screwed my Lachesis is getting. Because her strength should actually be higher than that by now. It's got a cap of 27, and she can actually reach that. She's got a 50% strength growth, so I don't know why my Lachesis isn't getting that much strength. Lisa's not quite as bad as what happened to Noish. Who, as much as I've, said bad things about him and Alak in general, really, Noish can actually become pretty decent. He does sort of need the Pursuit Ring, though. He's probably one of the best candidates for the Pursuit Ring, actually. Of course, you could give him the Hero Lance as well. But I like to have Finn keep it, because it's pretty much his signature weapon. Well, in Fire Emblem 5, yes, Finn does appear in Fire Emblem 5. Quite a few characters who appear in both this and that game. Fire Emblem 5, if you don't know, is actually takes place in between the two generations of this game. It's what they call a midquel. So a few characters coexist in both games, including possibly one of the most awesome characters of all time. Anyway, these are the Thracian Dragon Knights, and they're actually the first flying enemies you've faced so far. So, as you'll no doubt know if you have any knowledge of the series, flying units are weak to bows. Although Dragon Knights in Radiant Dawn actually weren't weak to bows. Which I thought was a pretty interesting addition. In Radiant Dawn, they basically changed their type from flyer to dragon. Also, as you probably know as well, they've always been called Dragon Knights in the Japanese games, and Fire Emblem 7, which was the first English game, and every English game since that called them Wyvern Riders. I actually do like that, because the reason for that is pretty much that Fire Emblem 7's mythology establishes that dragons haven't existed for about 1,000 years, and having a class called Dragon Knights would sort of contradict that. So I'm glad they sort of, made them a different kind of creature. Although, in Radiant Dawn, though, well, they still use the Wyvern Rider name in Path of Radiance, but in Radiant Dawn they changed back to using the original Japanese Draco Knight and Dragon Master for the promoted versions, which I think actually does make sense, and it does sound cooler that way. Anyway, back to stuff that is actually relevant. You won't actually get a playable Draco Knight until much later. But they're worth waiting for because they're awesome. It would be a pretty huge spoiler to reveal who it is, though. I'll just say you're in for a bit of a surprise.